Alors, j'y vais peut-être. Je vois que vous êtes tous à l'heure, c'est super. Alors, je vous souhaite d'abord une très belle année à tous. Bon, même si elle commence pas super bien, mais apparemment, Madame Vidal va parler ce soir. Donc, on va bien voir si elle dit quelque chose pour les étudiants. Mais bon, je crains que vous avez vu que j'ai mis un lien Zoom pour les 6 séances que je fais avec vous. Donc, malheureusement, je crains ne pas pouvoir vous voir en vrai. Mais on ne sait jamais, peut-être que cet après-midi, ce soir, elle va dire quelque chose d'intéressant. Voilà, on verra bien. Alors, donc ce semestre, donc encore moins, moi je ne crois pas trop non plus. Et donc ce semestre, euh, toujours oral English, and this semester I'll talk about allophony and connected speech processes. Okay, so I quit intonation and well, I'll talk about more segmental phenomena. So I'll come back to segmental processes rather than suprasegmental features that I was mentioning during the first semester. And so the aim of the course this semester is to make you familiar with the description, the production, and the perception of oral English as pronounced in more natural conditions than isolated words or formal reading, which you do most of the time in the TEDs and in the different courses. So yes, as I was telling you, last semester we dealt with suprasegmental phenomena, and here we're coming down a step as far as the segmental and suprasegmentals are concerned. So I was on the suprasegmental, and now I'm coming down a step. I'll be studying with you more segmental phenomena. So I'll come back at the level of the phoneme, if you like. Okay. And of course, I'll show you how it's linked to suprasegmental phenomena, and but still, I'll mention rather, I'll stay at the level of the segment. And so instead of talking about phonology, because what you did during first and second year is more about phonology. For instance, when you were transcribing sounds, you were doing, in fact, we were telling you that you were doing phonetic transcription, but in fact, you were doing phonemic transcription. And so I'm going to talk about the difference between phonetics and phonology. And well, you'll tell me if you're aware of those differences, but you're probably not very clear with this difference, which is not always easy, by the way. And so this semester we'll talk mostly about phonetic phenomena, that is, phenomena which are not really distinctive and phenomena which are not compulsory. And if you don't, for instance, I'll show you the different pronunciations of some sounds like R or L. And I show you, for instance, the difference between clear and dark L. But if you don't make the difference between clear and dark L, then it's not going to change the meaning of the word. So this is the level of phonetics and not the level of phonology. So I'm going to explain this in a minute. Okay. And so as far as the outline of the course is concerned, so as I said, I'll talk about phonetics versus phonology. So that's what I'll do today. About the IPA, which is the International Phonetic Alphabet. You must be aware of what the IPA is, but I'll give you maybe more details. And then I'll talk about broad and narrow transcription. As I said earlier, you did phonemic transcription. So up to now, you probably only did broad transcription. And I'll explain what narrow transcription is. It's phonetic transcription, which will give more details on the pronunciation. And then I'll talk about the pronunciation of R and L, which is different between the British variety of English and the American variety of English. So I'll talk about GB and GenAm. Then I'll talk about English plosives because, as you may be aware of, they have a particular pronunciation which is very different from the French pronunciation. So I'll focus on those differences. And then I'll talk about connected speech processes, that is assimilations and elisions. So these are phenomena which you do, sometimes you don't even realize that you do that, you're not aware, but you often do assimilations and elisions when you speak English. And so I'll show you really what those phenomena are, when you can elide a phoneme, and when you can do an assimilation. And we'll also listen to a few sound files so that you recognize those phenomena. Okay. The assessment is linked with the TD. So in fact, you will not be assessed during this particular course. The assessment is with the TD. So you'll have just one exam for TD and CM. And this exam will take place during the last week of the semester during your TD. And it's a written 1 hour exam. It's a quiz. So, because in fact, what I'm going to explain during the CM is what you're going to practice in your TD. So it's really linked. The two are very, very much linked, just as it was the case during the first semester. The difference is that during the first semester, you had a particular exam for the CM, and it's not the case here. The exam is just one exam for CM and TD. Okay. And again, I only have 6 courses, so it will be the first 6 weeks of the semester. So you have the dates here. So it's the first 6 weeks. Okay, any questions so far? Well, you're asking how your exams went for S5. Anxious to get your grades. Yes, I do have the grades, but I couldn't put the grades on the Amethyst, especially for the TD, because, you know, the last contrôle continu, okay, I speak in French because it's complicated with contrôle continu. So, le dernier contrôle continu, le CC2, là, que vous avez fait lors du dernier cours, on rend 2 notes. My general feeling is that it was not that bad. I was quite satisfied, in fact. So, oui, le CC2 du TD, c'est je rendais 2 notes. Je peux pas mettre 2 notes sur un métier, je peux en mettre qu'une. Donc, on n'a pas pu vous mettre les notes sur un métis. Mais bon, comme je vous dis, c'était pas si mal. Et le CM, je craignais le pire, mais c'est pas si mal que ça non plus, finalement. J'avais peur que vous n'ayez pas eu le temps de faire la faux, parce que c'était les 2 dernières questions, mais finalement, ça a été quand même. Et c'était assez court, et donc finalement, vous en êtes plutôt bien sortis. Plutôt mieux que l'année dernière, en fait. Bon, vous n'avez pas 15 de moyenne, tout ça, mais bon. On n'avait pas eu le temps, je sais, c'était short. Ouais, mais bon, comme vous avez quand même réussi, oui, mais bah, il n'y avait que 2 questions, parce que comme c'est un cours de 6 semaines, c'était forcément plus court que la linguistique et la grammaire. Vous devriez les avoir bientôt, les notes, parce qu'on les a rendues. Hein. Ils ont déjà tout corrigé, même mes collègues là, TD grammaire et CM linguistique, tout a été rendu. Mi-février.
Oui, ils nous ont dit le 15 février pour recevoir les notes.
Dommage parce que nous on les a déjà rendus. Hein. Oui, il y aura une note, exactement. Il y aura une note pour le CM de faux, alors qu'il comportait que 2 questions. Ouais. Vous êtes noté sur 20, comme pour les autres épreuves. Donc ça vous sauve un peu, même, souvent. Ouais. Et le CC phonétique, là par contre, on n'a pas encore rendu les notes, parce qu'on a une collègue qui n'a pas fini de corriger. Et donc on n'a pas encore rendu. Donc ça c'est pareil, j'imagine que vous aurez le détail des notes, je ne sais pas, je pense. Nous, on a rendu un fichier avec le détail avec les 3 notes et la moyenne. Donc, je pense qu'on... Alors, references. Bon. Je vous mettrai le diaporama sur un métis. Donc, vous aurez les références bibliographiques. Voilà, c'est des bouquins que moi j'utilise. Voilà, je vous les mets parce qu'on met toujours des références bibliographiques pour les cours. Vous pouvez trouver des choses intéressantes là-dedans. Et donc, vous les aurez sur un métis de toute façon. Okay. Right. So now I'd like to turn to the difference between phonetics and phonology. And first of all, I'd like to ask you if you already did things about phonetics and phonology. If you know the difference between phonetics and phonology. Of course, I can't see your faces, but maybe you can write on the chat if you're aware of what phonology is as opposed to phonetics. What are the difference between phonetics and phonology? Why are there two terms? And in which way they used? Clueless, okay? Not at all, not really. Okay, okay, so it won't be useless. Okay, right. So first of all, phonology. Phonology is what you probably often do when you think you do phonetics, in fact. I'd say that one is the study in itself and the other the application of it. Not really, in fact, but kind of. In fact, it's kind of yes, you can say in not really phonetics is not really the application of phonetics. But I see what you mean, but it's not. It's not exactly okay. I'll explain. So yes, so as I was telling you, usually when you do phonetics, in fact, you do phonology, because in fact the main difference between phonetics and phonology is what you study. So when you do phonology, you study it's this point here. You study the organization of sounds within a given language. So Lucy, you say you do phonology in Spanish. Yes, well, maybe you do phonetics as well. I don't know, but phonology is really when you study the system of a language. So you study the organization of sounds within a given language. Okay, you study the sounds as elements of a system, which means that when you do phonology, you look at phonemes, as they're called, and the definition of a phoneme is that the smallest distinctive unit of sound. And this word here, the word distinctive, is very, very important because this is what is going to distinguish phonetics and phonology. When you do phonology, you look at distinctive units. And when you do phonetics, as I'll explain in a minute, you look at the details and you don't really mind if it's distinctive or not. Okay, but when you do phonology, you're really interested in the distinctive units of sound. Okay, and so for instance, in a particular language, you're going to have so many phonemes. I think someone forgot to turn off their microphone. There's an interference, so can you check that you turned off your mic? Okay, thanks. Yes, so I was telling you when you look at the phonemes of language in a language, you can have so many phonemes, and then in another language you have other phonemes, and some phonemes in one language are not phonemes in another, okay, because they're not distinctive. And for example, if you don't know a language at all, if you study a very rare language, say, what you do to find the system, so to find the phonemes of the language, is you try and find minimal pairs, as they're called. So minimal pairs are pairs of words in which there's only one phoneme which is different in the pair, but you have a different meaning. So here I give you the example of lake and cake here. So you see in lake and cake, there's only one phoneme which is different. It's the initial phoneme. It's the first one. In lake, you have le, and in cake, you have ke. But the other sounds are exactly the same. And since lake and cake have two different meanings, it means that le and ke are phonemes in English. Okay? So that's for consonants. Now, if you take a minimal pair like bed and bad, again, the only difference in the sound is e and a. And since the meaning of bed and bad is different, you know that e and a are phonemes in English. Okay? Now, if I take, for instance, vase and base, okay, I know that b and v are phonemes in English. Okay, but you know, for instance, that b and v are not distinctive in Spanish. Okay, they are not two different phonemes. They are the same pronunciation of one phoneme, because if you say vamos or vamos, it's exactly the same word. So in Spanish, b and v are not phonemes. Okay, they're not distinctive because they don't make different words. Okay, this is really what's very important. It's the idea of distinctive units of sound. So phonemes are the smallest units of sounds, but they must be distinctive. Okay, and so once you have found all the phonemes of a language, then you can say that you have found a system, and then you're going to study the sounds as elements of this particular system. And of course, the systems are different according to the languages. Okay, so phonemes are kind of abstract units. You're not looking at really the way b or le are pronounced. Okay, you don't really mind. What's interesting is the organization of those sounds in the system. This is why I wrote here that phonemes are abstract units. Okay, and this is very different when you do phonology, when you do phonetics, because when you do phonetics, then you analyze the sounds as no longer as elements of the system, but as acoustic units produced by a physiological mechanism, that is your mouth and your lungs and everything that helps you produce the sounds. So it's really acoustic units. You're going to be interested also in articulatory phenomena. And so when you do phonetics, you really look at acoustic units and no longer distinctive units. You don't really mind if they're distinctive or not. Okay, so you study sounds and their details. You study the way they're produced, and you also study the way they vary according, for instance, to the environment, according to the person, and also maybe according to, I don't know, gender, age, social class, and everything. Well, when you do that, you do sociophonetics, in fact. It's phonetics still, it's still phonetics. So you study the details of the production and you study the variation. And when you do phonetics, you don't look at phonemes, you look at phones. So the units that you study when you do phonetics are called phones. Okay, and since I'm telling you that you look at the detail, the production, the variation, of course, you can have different pronunciations for one particular phoneme. So for instance, when you look at L, you know that you have clear L and dark L. Well, clear L and dark L are two different realizations of one phoneme L. Okay, and those different realizations are called allophones. So when you have several realizations for one phoneme, you talk about allophones. So maybe I can give you an example here. Since I told you, you know, as I said, you find the minimal pair lake and cake. So you know that le and ke are two different phonemes. But then if you take lake and look at the way it's pronounced, a British speaker will pronounce lake with a clear L, okay, as you know. And an American speaker will produce lake with a dark L. Okay. Ooh. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. So you see here the difference in British between British English and American English. There is a difference in the pronunciation. So in British English you say lake, and in American English you say a lake. Yes. Well, what are clear L and dark L? Okay. Well, clear L is this one. Clear L is the same L as in French. You know when you say lac and lake, you pronounce L in the same way. It's the same as the French one. But in American English, you don't say lake, you say lake. I don't know if you can hear it. You say lake, and the tip of your tongue is a little bit curled, and you pronounce O instead of L. You say O. You see, so you've got a different pronunciation at the articulatory level. And you see, yes, I do hear the difference. Okay. So you see, when you say lake and lake, there is a difference in pronunciation, but there's no difference in the meaning of the word. If someone says lake and someone says lake, it's still the same word, which means that clear L and dark L are not phonemes in English. They are allophones of L. So you say, so you're going to write phonetics into brackets and phonology, this I'll show you later, and phonology into slashes like this. So you can say that L has different allophones, which are clear L, which you will write clear L exactly in the same way. So you can say that clear L and dark L are allophones of the phoneme L in English. Okay, and of course you need to add in English, because in some languages dark L is a phoneme, but not in English. Okay, I can't remember which language. There aren't many languages, but there is one language. I can't remember which one. I think it's an African language. I'm not sure. In which dark L is a phoneme. Okay, is that clear so far? Wolof, maybe, yes. It's not Wolof I was thinking of, but maybe it's the case in Wolof as well. Thanks. And do you have a difference between the two L's in Wolof? Do you have minimal pairs with the clear L and dark L? That's interesting. Well, you tell me, Amadou. Okay. So anyway, if you have questions, and you can ask questions next week as well if you're not sure you have understood properly. Okay, so this is really the main difference between phonetics and phonology, and I'll come back to it in a little bit later when we talk about broad and narrow transcription. Okay, but first I'd like to show you the IPA. So what we do is we use, in fact, the IPA when we transcribe into phonetics or in phonology. And as you probably know, the IPA is the International Phonetic Alphabet. And the International Phonetic Alphabet was created to serve as a universal alphabet with the same symbol used for the same sound in different languages. So the idea was to find an alphabet that could transcribe all the languages of the world. So the IPA contains all the sounds that are part of oral language. So as you can read, it's a standardized representation of the sounds of oral language. The IPA was created by the International Phonetic Association, which is the IPA as well. So the acronym stands for International Phonetic Alphabet and International Phonetic Association as well, which still exists, by the way, the association. And they continue to edit, they edit a journal every year. And well, they work on phonetics and phonology. So I was telling you the IPA contains all the sounds that are part of oral language, so all the sounds which exist in all the languages of the world. And so phones in a language can be phonemes in another, as we saw, for instance, for b and v. And the IPA, the alphabet, is constituted of basic symbols and also diacritics. It's a little, yes, symbols as well, that allow the representation of all the sounds of all the languages of the world, so that the IPA offers a notational standard for phonetic representation with symbols, conventions, which is needed to transcribe all the languages of the world. So you can hear, I think this, yes, I think this site no longer works, but I'm going to check, because I think the other day I pinballed, if it works, I'm sure. Yes, it does work. So yes, on this website, Dialect Services, you can find the phonetic alphabet, and in fact, you find it also on the IPA, the International Phonetic Association website. And here's a consonants. Yes, so if you go on Dialect Services, then you go to IPA charts. And for instance, if you go to palmonic consonants, no, it doesn't work. Yes, this I had the problem a few weeks ago. Okay, no, it doesn't matter. I won't find it today. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it's a pity because you have all this. So this is the chart of the International Phonetic Alphabet. Maybe you know this one. What we do is in the TEDx, we give you this chart, and you can have it with you for the exam, so that you know what's going on, and it can help you really. So here, as you can see, I don't know if you see very well. Maybe I can zoom a bit. So here, if I take here, you have the chart for palmonic consonants. Here, another chart for non-palmonic consonants. These are clicks. And I'll play a few. I think I'm not sure I have them. No, I don't.
Madame, I don't know if it's just me, but I still have the sound recording page and not the diagrams.
Sorry, yes, no, it's not you, it's everyone. Change sharing. So yes, I was telling you, this is the International Phonetic Alphabet chart. And if I zoom in a bit, so here you have the chart for consonants, pulmonic consonants, non-pulmonic consonants. Here you've got the vowels, and here other symbols and diacritics. Okay, so if I zoom in a bit, so here you have all the pulmonic consonants that exist in all the languages of the world. Okay. And so if I try to play, I'm going to play something so that you can see. So that you can as well. So you see here on the consonants, you've got here plosives. You probably studied this in first or second year, I don't know. You saw what plosives were, what nasals were, what trills were, and well, maybe not trills, but fricatives. And of course, those are all the languages of the world. So I'll play, for instance, I'm going to play trills. Okay, trills, it's this line here. There are only 3 trills. There's the bilabial trill, the alveolar trill, and the uvular trill. So listen to this.
Next are the trills, involving the repeated vibration of one articulator against another. There are only 3 of these, and we pronounce them all voiced. First, a bilabial trill, ra.
Ra. Then an alveolar trill, ra.
Ra.
And a uvular trill, ra. Ra.
Okay, so you see, we don't have those. For instance, the first one, the bilabial trill, we don't have it in English or in French, but it does exist in other languages. And now I'll play maybe the fricatives because there are many, you see here. And in French, for instance, we have fe and ve. In English too. In English, there are the th sounds, sun, ze, shen, je, and h. So that's it. But there are all those fricatives exist in the languages of the world.
Now come the fricatives. They involve forcing the airstream through a narrow gap, which causes it to be turbulent. The result is heard as friction. The fricatives come in pairs, with first a voiceless and then a voiced one at each place of articulation. We begin with the bilabial fricatives. Fa, va.
Fa. Va. Then the labiodentals, fa, va.
Fa, va. Dental fricatives, tha, tha.
Tha, tha. Alveolars, sa, za.
Sa, za. And post-alveolars, sometimes known as palatoalveolars, sha, ja.
Sha, ja. The retroflex fricatives are sha, ja.
Sha, ja. Then the palatals, sa, ya.
Hya, ya. Velars, cha, ra.
Cha, ra. and uvular fricatives ha, ra.
aha, ara. Then we take the pharyngeal fricatives, made by constricting the pharynx. Ha, ha.
Aha, ara. And last along the fricative row, the so-called glottal fricatives. Ha, ha.
Aha, aha. And then there are also the lateral fricatives at the alveolar place of articulation. La, la.
Asa, aza.
Okay, so you see many sounds that we don't have in French or in English, but which exist in languages that you probably know. For instance, this one is present in Spanish. This one is present in Arabic, and this one too, I think. Those probably in more Eastern languages, I'm not sure. So you see many languages, many sounds, I mean, that you find in other languages. So it's the same clicks, for instance. You have the bilabial click, which is like this, you know, and you do sounds just with your lips, or when we do, that's a click as well. So here with the IPA, you can transcribe any sound using either those symbols here or those symbols plus diacritic symbols that you can add for instance, to show that it's voiceless, voiced, aspirated, more rounded, less rounded, and so on. So I'll show you. We're not going to use all those, but it's just to show you. And same for vowels. So if I take the consonants of English, yes, of course, the IPA, but I think you still have it first a second. All those here, this chart, with all those words that can seem a bit complex, like bilabial, labiodental, or nasal, tap, flap, all those are linked to the way you pronounce the sounds. That is, for instance, when you talk about a bilabial sound, it means that the two lips come together. You have upper and lower lip, which come together. When it's, for instance, when it's velar, you talk about the velum, which is the soft palate. So velum here is number 5 here, velum, you see. So it's this soft part, you have the hard palate here after your teeth, and then this soft part which moves is the soft palate, which helps you close or open the nasal cavity, by the way. Yeah, nasal cavity. So if you put your velum back against here, well, if you move it backwards, then you close the nasal cavity, and then you make an oral sound. And if you open the nasal cavity, then you can pronounce a nasal sound. And this is why, for instance, m and b are both bilabial. But if you take m, it's a nasal because the air comes out through the nose. And if you take b, then the air comes out when you open your mouth. It comes out through the mouth and not through the nose. Which they're exactly the same sounds. When you say m and b, you do the same articulation. Magat, you said the vocal cords. The vocal cords are here. It's the larynx, and you have the vocal cords here in the larynx. The vocal cords vibrate or not, and this is how you distinguish voiced and voiceless sounds. It's a voiced sound is produced with vibration of the vocal cords, and a voiceless sound is produced without the vibration of the vocal cords. It's the difference between, say, sunze, for instance. All those are voiceless and all those are voiceless. Okay. So in English, so these are, so here I show you the chart from the IPA with all the consonants, the phonemic consonants, and here it's only the English consonants. So you see in English we have voiceless and voiced pairs each time with p, b, t, d, k, g. These are plosives. And there's also the glottal stop, but glottal stop is not a phoneme in English, it's a phone. It's an allophone of t most of the time. Sometimes there's d, but usually it's an allophone of t. So here, I wrote it here, but it's not a phoneme in English because it's never distinctive. You can't find a minimal pair with a glottal stop. So glottal stop is a phone, and all the others are phoneme. Then you have affricates. So we have ch in English, and then fricatives, fv, the th sounds, sz, sh, and h. And here in English, h is voiceless, and the voiced counterpart does not exist, which is here. It does not exist in English, nor does it exist in French. We don't even have h in French. And finally, there are sonorants. So we have w, r, y, l, and the nasals. Here are the three nasals that you know. So this chart for English consonants is going to be very important when we talk about assimilations. In order to understand assimilations, it's going to be very important you understand this chart quite well. Okay, so you need to understand what that means: bilabial, labiodental, apicodental, apicoalveolar, dorsopalatal, dorsovelar, and glottal. So again, as I explained, it's linked to the way you articulate the sounds, and those are the articulators. So, for instance, a bilabial sound, as I started explaining, is a sound which is produced with both lips coming close together. So when you say p, b, you can see your lips, p, b, w, here the lips are not closed, but they come together. W and m, it's exactly the same as pen b, you have your lips closed. Labiodental means that you have the lower lip against the upper teeth. So when you say f and v, you can feel your lower lip coming against your upper teeth when you do f and v. Apicodental means apico refers to the apex, which is the tip of the tongue. So the tip of the tongue is against your teeth. So when you pronounce th, both voiced and voiceless th, the tip of your tongue goes against your teeth. So you say that, for instance, you can feel the tip of your tongue against your teeth. And if you have problem pronouncing, then what you can do is put the tip of your tongue in between your lips, and you can say and make the tip of the tongue come out. Then apicoalveolar, again, it's the tip of the tongue, but this time it's against the alveolar ridge, which is here, just behind your teeth. Alveolar ridge. In French, it's les alvéoles. It's what you can feel like this behind your teeth. So it's what you can feel with t, d, s, z, and also those three, R, L, and N. Dorsopalatal means that that your tongue is against your palate. So here it's this part of the tongue, number 9. So the front of the tongue goes against your palate. So when you pronounce sh and je or ye, it's in between the front and the back. Okay. And dorsovelar, it's rather number 10. It's the back of the tongue against the velum here. So here you have a contact, either a closure at this point or they come close together. For k and g, and for ng. Okay, here at this level. So this is velar. So usually what we do is we don't say apicodental, we just say dental, alveolar, palatal, and velar. Okay, we don't use apical or dorsal, which is say the second part. So this will be important when we study, as I said, assimilations. Then, as far as vowels are concerned, so here again, this is the chart for vowels in the IPA, and what they show in the IPA are what are called the cardinal vowels. That is the most extreme vowels that you can pronounce when you're a human being. And then in the different languages of the world, then those vowels can be more central, more back, more front, more open, more close. So, but here what's represented is, what you call the cardinal vowels. So the closest and frontest vowel you can find is E. It's when you can't pronounce a sound which is closer and which is fronter than E. Okay, so E, it's almost the same as the French one. French E is the cardinal E. So E as in seat, for instance, in French, is very close, very front. And so these here are the most extreme vowels you can find. So you've got E, E, A. And the second vowel you find here is exactly the same, but with your lips rounded. So when you make your lips rounded, when you pronounce E, if you do a rounding of the lips, you come to U. EU. You see? EU. So those two are exactly the same, but this one has spread lips and this one has rounded lips. So here this symbol is for sound U, the sound we have in French in lune, for instance. Lune. And those are the central sounds, and it's the same. Here you've got the vowels with lips in a neutral position, and here with rounded lips. And here is the other way around. Here, these here are rounded, and these here are not rounded. Okay, so again, it's the cardinal vowels. So if I take O here, the most back vowel and open vowel is O, and it's rounded. And if you pronounce it with lips in a neutral position, then you come to R. It's a very back R. Okay, and so these are the vowels of English in black, and I placed the vowels of French in red. So normally when I have the slideshow, it comes, but here I didn't play the show because I think sometimes it doesn't work very well. So I don't know if you know where the vowels of French are, but here, so you know the diagram, the vowel chart. Okay, well, you see here, you've got front, central, back, close, mid, open, and open. So it's as if you saw someone, as you can see here, as if you saw a profile, and it's the left profile. Okay, so left, so similar like this left profile. So, well, what you can see here. So when the mouth is very open, it's here, it's the sounds you've got here. And when the mouth is very closed, in fact, we talk about close vowels because it means that the tongue is close to the palate. So when your mouth is closed, you pronounce close vowels. and it's this part. Okay, so E and U are closed vowels. And of course, then you have close mid, open mid, or mid high, mid low, as I say, well, or high. And this part here is when the tongue is towards the front. So when the tongue is towards here, you pronounce E. So you can feel that your tongue is towards your teeth when you pronounce E. And when you pronounce U, then your tongue moves back towards the back of your throat. So if you go EU, if you do EU, you can feel your tongue moving back in your mouth. Okay, so this is why we say that E is a front vowel and U is a back vowel. And then, of course, you've got central vowels. So this is interesting when you see the charts for English and French, because you see that here, this sound here, which is short E, is closer to E than to E. French, I mean, is closer to French E than to French E. And same for U here, it's closer to French O than French U. And you see there's only one E in French, so this is EU in French, so cite et lune. This is E as in blé. And the rounded counterpart, which is E as in feu. So here we've got E, E, and you see it's exactly the same, E, E. It's just the rounding of the lips, which is different. So blé and feu. Here you've got E, the one you find in bête, for instance, bête. And this one is as in beurre. So you've got beurre, bête, beurre. Then in French, you only have one especially in the south of France, we only have one, which is central. Now, in some varieties of French, you've got two sounds, one which is very front, especially in Paris, for instance, you say pat and pot. So you've got pat and pot, but here we say pat and pat. So it's central. Then we've got open O as in bot, une botte, B-O-T-E, ou un homme. And close O as in beau, B-E-A-U, beau. So O, O, and U as in book, very rounded book. And we also have jva, as in petit. Petit is a jva. In fact, in French, jva is the sound that you can drop, because in some varieties of French, you say petit instead of petit. So the E in petit is a jva because it can be dropped. Okay, so you see here, when you look at the French vowels, then you understand where we have problems, we French people, when we speak English. For instance, here, this zone is very complicated for us because in English, you've got 4 sounds, and in French, there's only 1. So it's very difficult. This is why it's so difficult for us to pronounce all those sounds and make contrasts between them. And you also understand why English should probably be written like this, because it's closer to open E than to close E. And in English, when you say 7, it's much closer to E than to E. You don't say 7, you say 7, so it should be much more open. And some phonologists write an E sound, an open E sound. And you also understand why it's so complex for us to pronounce 2 E sounds and 2 U sounds, because when you have one here and here. Okay. And so now I've got 3 minutes left to just explain the difference between broad and narrow transcription. So broad transcription is phonemic transcription, in fact, so you transcribe phonology, so you only transcribe the phonemes. And so you're going to write between slashes, show primary and secondary stress, give the weak forms, the linking hours if any, but no other connected speech processes. Okay. For instance, if you have a devoicing, when you say, for instance, when you say, I was tired, if you take the isolated words, you write I was with a Z sound. I was tired. So in a phonemic transcription, you're going to write was with a Z sound. Okay, but in fact, when you speak, you don't say I was tired. You say I was tired, because t has an influence on z, and it's going to devoice the z sound into a s sound. So in fact, you say I was tired. Don't say I was. You say I was tired. But in the phonemic transcription, you're not going to write a s. You're going to write z, because this is a phonetic phenomenon. Okay, so normally in the phonemic transcription, you don't write assimilations, for instance. Okay, and in the phonetic transcription, you do. So in the phonetic transcription, you're going to write as many details as possible, but we'll see that in fact you don't write as many details as that, because it would be far too complex. So the phonetic transcription is written into brackets instead of slashes, so you write brackets. And for instance, in the phonetic transcription, you're going to write dark L, but not in the phonemic transcription. Okay, in the phonemic transcription, even if it's a, for instance, if you transcribe milk, you're not going to transcribe dark L, because it's not distinctive here. So you write a normal, the phoneme L. But in the phonetic transcription, you're going to write dark L. You're going to write the aspiration of plosives, for instance, which we'll see later. You're going to write devoicing, if any. You're going to write T-flapping in American, for instance, butter, like this. And other diacritics if needed, but we'll see that we're not going to use many diacritics, and we'll use mostly these so as not to make the phonetic transcription too complex. Okay, so I'll show you next week. Well, just very quickly, what I'll show you again next week. You see, this is a very detailed transcription with many diacritics. Okay, and so this is how you could transcribe, but it's far too complex, so we're not going to do that. But I'll play a few sound files next week so as to show you a few differences. Okay. So I'll see you next week then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.